I better clarify right away that I did not wear this almost white dress to my friend's wedding. Instead, I made this exact design in green satin, as green was the theme color of the event. I was inspired of the Y2K trend and from a dress my mom purchased for herself in early 2000s. I really like the asymmetric cut and the small ruffles that are adding a touch of femininity while not making the dress overly romantic. From a practical standpoint, I added a slit that extends slightly above the knee. I placed it there because I like to walk fast and I take huge steps, so the slit is there primarily because of comfort. The back is slightly lowered, literally this amount, so it safely covers a bra. I have a really hard time to evaluate the complexity of this sewing project. If you have a bit of experience and you have dealt with invisible zippers, then it shouldn't be overly difficult. I managed to sew the green dress in 5 hours, though the time could vary depending from the hemming technique you choose for the ruffles. However, since it is an asymmetric maxi dress, the pattern details are comparatively big and many, so keep in mind that the cutting process might take longer than usual. For this pattern you will need a light fabric. It can be silk, viscose, polyester fabric. If it's not transparent, you don't need a lining, you can use facing instead. Or you can also use transparent chiffon fabrics, either single color or printed ones. But then you will also need a lining. For the lining, you can use any lining fabrics or some basic cotton or viscose fabrics. However, for this specific design, you can also use a lycra jersey lining. It will be very soft to your skin and it's just not as stiff as the woven linings. You will also need an invisible zipper that is at least 35 cm long and matching threads. If you will be using a facing instead of lining, then I also recommend to use interfacing for the facing details. You will also need a Reyna dress sewing pattern, which you can find in our Etsy or online store. Links are down in the description. I will warn you right away that there are a lot of pages to print. I also made 2 separate files for the upper layer and the lining. So if you choose the option without the lining, you wouldn't need to waste paper on that. Or you can also print only the lining file if you want to make a simple slip dress like this. This pattern comes in US letter A4 format that you can print with the regular printer, as I have done here. And it also comes in A0 format, which you can print at a copy shop, and then you will not have to do this crazy assembly. By the way, if you want to see more behind the scenes and sometimes even participate in our sewing pattern designing process, follow us on Instagram. And if you are making this dress, it would be very kind if you could use this hashtag so other people could get some inspiration of your make. Remember that these facing details are optional depending from your fabric. When cutting the darts off the front panels, I recommend to cut only one side of the dart and fold the other. This way you will be able to properly cut the side seam and also mark the dart with a marker or a soap. When it comes to the darts of the back panels, simply cut them out so you would be able to mark them. When you are cutting the ruffles, bring your attention to these lines and cut according to your size. If you are making this dress as the ruffle option, then you do not need to cut these facing details, and also you don't need to cut that strap detail again. Normally, I would suggest to cut the dress longer, try it on at the very end before hemming, and shorten according to your preference. For this specific design, it would be a bit difficult to shorten it later, so this is the best time to make your decision about the length. You can either look in our finished garment measurement chart or measure from the waistline to the hem. After that, take a measurement tape, add this length to your waist and check out how do you like it. Also, don't forget about the shoes. If you want to wear this dress with heels, definitely put them on. Or even if you will be wearing it with flat shoes with a thick sole or a small heel, put them on. By the way, I am 1 meter and 65 centimeters tall. In pattern making, this is like the standard average height for women. However, I am from a country with the tallest woman in the world, and I can affirm that I am the shortest in my group of friends. I came to a conclusion that I need to shorten this dress by 6 centimeters. Measure this length from the hem and draw a new hemline on front and back third and fourth panels. After drawing the new hemline, cut the excessive part off. In case if you want to add some length, glue some paper at the bottom of the third and fourth panels and then redraw the new hemline below the current one. Here you have to be very careful because now the ruffle length has changed as well. If you shorten the dress, we need to shorten the ruffles as well, and vice versa. Measure the amount you have cut off and then mark this amount by measuring from the inside of the ruffle. Draw a new line and trim off the excessive part. If you added the length, then add this amount at the outside part of the ruffle. Do the step for the fourth ruffle, the front and back slit ruffles. Also remember to take off or add the length to both front and back lining panels, if you are using them. I will be using a sewing machine and a serger to knit on the seams. If you don't have a serger, you can also use sewing machine's zigzag stitch. Finally, we are ready for the cutting. Since most of the details are asymmetric, we need to lay the fabric unfolded in one layer. Very often it is more difficult to cut light fabrics compared to medium and heavyweight fabrics. That's why I used a lot of pins and weights to fix the paper pattern on the fabric. Remember to mark the darts either with a fabric marker or a soap. Also mark all the notches at the slit, zipper, etc. Bring attention to the ruffles because some of them had to be cut only one time, but first, second, third and fourth ruffles have to be cut on fold. Or if you do not cut them on fold, then remember to cut them one time with the printed pattern part facing upwards and one time the printed pattern is facing the fabric, so they would be mirroring each other. My strategy to cut circular ruffles is to cut around first and then cut towards the center. I don't usually do this, but today I am going to use stickers to mark the ruffles, because they are very similar but in different lengths and I want to avoid any confusion. If you are also using stickers for marking, be very careful not to burn them in. I also intentionally put them closer to the middle so I could faster recognize which side of the ruffle will be going to the left side of the dress. If you are using a lining, then also cut the lining panels right now, mark the darts and all the notches. If you are using facing details instead, then remember to cut the interfacing for the facing details. Let's start by sewing the darts for the front and back panels. For the front panels, my usual tactic is to start by the tip of the dart, put a pin at the very top and then fold the dart and finish pinning the dart. However, when I am sewing, I always start from the side seam to the tip of the dart. I find it very difficult to do it other way around because then I have to start on the very edge of the fabric. Be very careful with backstitching. If you have a very light fabric, your sewing machine might pull it in the feed dogs opening or gather the fabric. Alternative option would be to leave long tails of the threads and tie a knot at the beginning and ending of the seam. Pin the darts of the back panel. Tie the tips of the dart and fold the panel at those points. Pin the darts by matching the marked line on both sides. Stitch from one tip of the dart to another. I get very lucky with this fabric because even though it is a chiffon, I can do backstitching with no problems. Also, cutting was pretty easy, so I guess impossible is possible. Press the front darts towards the waistline. I always place these type of darts on the curved edge of the ironing board because this detail isn't flat anymore, and this way I can better press them. Just so you know, I cannot apply any pressure on this fabric or it will lose this texture, so I'm doing these weird movements, but it's pressing very well with the steam. If you have a normal fabric, press it as a normal person. Press the back darts either towards the middle or towards the side seams. I don't know which is the correct direction. I think scientists are still arguing about this. Lay the front panels and back panel with right sides together. Pin the side seams. Remember that there will be a zipper on the right side, so on the right side stitch only from the armhole to the notch. When it comes to the left side seam, stitch from the armhole to the bottom edge. Stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. After sewing, we need to neaten the seam allowances. I will neaten both layers together of the left side seam. However, we need to neaten front and back panels separately of the right side seam. When working with sheer fabrics, I prefer to neaten seam allowances together because the seam allowance will be somewhat visible from the outside. And then I would prefer that it is narrower compared if I would neaten separately and then press the seams open. On the right side seam we have no choice because we have to keep it open so we could sew in the zipper. Press the right side seam towards the back panel. Press the right side seam open. Also, very often neatening slightly gathers light fabrics even if you use the best settings on your serger or sewing machine. Usually it goes out after pressing. Now take all 3 top ruffles, lay them with the right sides facing and pin the side seams. Lay them in this exact order as in this video. I know the information on the pattern look like it is flipped. It is because in real life I made a mistake myself and I realized that only later. And you know what? While we are here, let's prepare the rest of the ruffles as well. This will help us to save a lot of time. So take the first ruffle, lay it with the right sides facing and pin the side seams. Do the exact same step for the second and third ruffle. When working with the fourth and the slit ruffle, we need to stitch only one side seam. The other edge will go to the hem and it has to stay open. We need to pin the edge that is more towards the outside. And don't do anything with this other edge. The same goes for the slit ruffle. Pin the outside edge and leave the other edge open. Let's stitch all the side seams 1 cm apart from the edge. After sewing, we need to neaten the side seams. And again, I will neaten both layers together. Press the side seams of that top ruffle towards the back ruffle panel. Press the rest of the side seams towards one side, and this time I wouldn't even stress to which side we should press. If you are also using stickers, remember not to put iron on top of them. Now we need to hem the ruffles. I will do rolled hem with the serger because it is the fastest one. However, there are other alternatives that you can do with the sewing machine. I have linked a tutorial video in the description for the other types of narrow hems that would be suitable for these ruffles. I will show you how to set up the serger for a rolled hem. So first thing is I change the needle from the left side to the right side. This will make the hem narrower. And of course you need to change the placement of the thread. Take it from the left needle and place it for the right needle. We also need to adjust the tension. For both loopers, set it to the maximum. For the right needle, set it slightly higher than you normally use. If you have a differential feed, you can play around with these settings as well. If you decrease it to 0.7, you will get a lettuce hem. It would also look good, but this time I will stick with the normal one. I will also decrease the stitch length, however you will need to test out with the scrap fabric. I usually leave it between number 1 and 2. It depends from the fabric. Here is a magic button that is responsible for widening the stitch, and we need to turn it off. The final thing we need to do is to set the stitch width to the lowest amount. Please don't judge me for not cleaning the serger before filming. Take some scrap fabric, and not like any scrap fabric, but exactly the one that you are using for this dress. See how the rolled hem looks, and if you don't like it, change a bit the stitch length, and if that doesn't work, change the tensions or widen the stitch width. Hem all the ruffles. Take a look at these illustrations to know precisely which edges you need to hem. The fourth and the slit ruffle will need to be hemmed at the shortest edges as well. While we are here, let's hem the third and fourth panels. This way we will be done with hemming for good, and we will not need to set the serger or sewing machine for hemming again. Now we can set up the serger or a sewing machine to the previous settings, because we will not need to hem anything anymore. Lay the top ruffles wrong side with the top panels right side. Match the side seams and the notches at the middle at the back panels. It might seem a bit weird to pin the ruffle on the top's front panel upper corners. Don't pin the ruffle too tightly there. I will show you in a moment how to deal with these corners. Stitch around 5 mm apart from the edge. When you reach the corner at the front, leave the needle inside the fabric. Lift the presser foot. Take your scissors and make a cut inside ruffle's seam allowance that goes almost to the stitch. Now adjust the ruffle so it lays nicely on the neckline. Lower the presser foot and continue sewing. Here I hope you can see there is like a V shape on the seam allowance. Do this cut for the other corner as well. Lay the smallest top panel on the other top panel with the right sides together. Pin this diagonal seam and also match the middle notch and the side seams. Stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. After that, let's neaten all these 3 layers together. Just to be clear, you need to pivot at the middle of the neckline or where these 3 layers become 2. Press the seam downwards. Try to do it very lightly and don't press too much all over the ruffle, because we still want the ruffle to keep its shape. Just an idea, I think this pattern would also look interesting as a top. Maybe I would slightly even out the bottom hem and then I would add the first ruffle. This is a very convenient moment to sew the zipper. Open the zipper. Lay the right side of the zipper taped to the top's right side. At top of the zipper there is a longer plastic tube that is stopping the zipper. Match this plastic part with the end of the previously made seam. Pin the zipper to the top. I highly recommend to pin horizontally. Otherwise, if you will pin vertically, the zipper will slide up and down when you will be sewing. I will pin the other side of the zipper tape right now. However, you can also pin the other side later, after we will stitch on the first side of the zipper. That way might be a bit easier for beginner sewists. Make a stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. Also stop stitching around 2 cm above the slider. Change your sewing machine's regular foot to zipper's foot. Ideally use this one, if you have it, but sadly it doesn't fit my sewing machine, so I will use the standard zipper foot. And by the way, we can get equally good result with this one. Initially I will set it up in a way that the needle is on the left side of this zipper's foot. The first stitch we are going to make is meant to stabilize and fix the zipper to the fabric. At this point, we're not trying to stitch right next to the zipper's teeth. As a reminder, please don't sew over the pins. It's not healthy to the sewing machine and it's also a big safety risk for you. As you can see, we have fixed the zipper to the fabric, but we need to make another stitch to make it truly invisible. Make a stitch as close as possible to the zipper's teeth, but be very careful not to stitch on the teeth because then you might break the zipper and it definitely will not close. My trick is to use my left hand to pull the zipper's teeth to the left side in a way the zipper flattens out for a moment. I have seen people ironing invisible zippers flat to easier get close to the zipper's teeth, but I am strongly against it because then the teeth will become more visible, so it destroys the idea. Just try to take your time. If you will get a bit too far from the teeth, we can also use the iron to make the fabric cover the zipper more. Reset the zipper's foot in a way that the needle is on the right side of the zipper's foot. Let's do the exact same steps for the other side of the zipper. Make a stitch around 5 mm apart from the edge. And then make another stitch right next to the zipper's teeth. Check whether you can close the zipper and how does it look. We can finish the side seam now, so lay the front and back panels with the right sides facing. Pin the side seam. In case you also have one panel that is longer than the other, use scissors to even it out. This has been a cutting error on my side. Make a stitch that starts next to the previously made stitch. You will not be able to stitch right on top of the previous stitch, don't worry about it. This stitch has to be like 2 mm apart. We cannot start a stitch below, otherwise there will be a hole below the zipper. After you get through this challenging beginning, stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. Press the seam open. Also carefully press the zipper from the right side of the dress. I will show you this one trick I highly recommend not to skip. So when you are opening the zipper, every time it is hitting against the side seam and eventually the threads of the side seam will break. That's why I am using the regular needle with the thread and I will make a few stitches on the zipper, around the zipper, so it will block the zipper slider to hit the side seam. If you are brave enough, you can also use sewing machine zigzag stitch. Just be careful to regulate the width so it is wider than the zipper stitch, but at the same time the stitch goes only on the zipper and not on the fabric. This is how it should look like, and we can check how the zipper will stop right above the side seam. Let's move on to the straps. We need to fold them on half lengthwise and make a stitch 5 mm apart from the folded edge, not from the raw edge. One option would be to pin them, but I will show you a trick how I save some time on flipping the straps from the inside out. So the first thing is that I take the threads and pull them very long. They have to be longer than the strap itself. Then I place them exactly at the middle of the strap and I follow the strap panel around the threads. Continue sewing as you normally would, but do not let the tails of the threads to disappear in the strap. Also be careful not to cut off those long threads. Trim off the seam allowance so there would be around 4 mm left. Carefully pull those long tails of threads. The most difficult part usually is to get the other ending of the strap inside. Take some time on it. Maybe even use pliers to gently push it inside. Once you have managed to do it, keep pulling the threads to flip the strap from the inside out. Do the exact same steps for the other strap as well. I'm a huge advocate for ironing straps. Use your fingers to push the seam towards the edge and then press. Since these straps are cotton bias, they sometimes get cranky when I am ironing. To fix this, iron from the other side. Lay the straps on top's right side against the notches. Place the straps downwards and pin them. Make a stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. I highly recommend to do a quick try-on, mainly because of the straps. In the sewing pattern, the straps are slightly longer than it should be for this straight style, just in case if you want to cross them at the back. I really like both options, but I think I will go with the crossed option. And you can also regulate how high you want this neckline to be. Just remember that there is 1 centimeter of the seam allowance, so in reality this will be a bit lower here. So now you can pin down the straps and decide about the height of this neckline. Once you have pinned down the straps, I highly recommend to take a marker and mark them and then take out the pins, because if you will leave the pins in and take off the dress, then you can really hurt yourself with the pins. So let's mark the upper edge of the strap, like here it goes next to the... Follow my movements. Make sure that the straps would lay flat on you, but remember we need to pin it downwards like I am doing, otherwise we wouldn't be able to join the facing or lining. Make a stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. Let's prepare the skirt panels of the dress. So take the front and back panels and stitch together the according first, second, third and fourth panels. Start by laying the first panels together with the right sides facing. Pin the side seams. After that, move to the second and third panels. Bring attention to the fourth panel. There is only one side seam and you need to stitch from the upper edge to the notch. Stitch 1 centimeter apart from the edge. While we are here, also neaten all of these side seams. If you are also using a serger for neatening, it is better not to cut off the serger threads right away, otherwise they will come undone very soon. My go-to method how I deal with this issue is to leave a longer tail of serger threads and then to use a tapestry needle to hide these threads inside the seam allowance. This will ensure that you can wash this dress in a washing machine and the threads will be staying at the place and nothing will become undone. Press all these side seams. We are ready to move to the fun part. Take the first ruffle and lay its right side to top's right side. On paper pattern there are letters at the inside corner of the ruffle and the lower corner of the top, so you need to match these corners. Match the other side seam of the ruffle to the shortest side seam of the top. Pin the ruffle around the top. Stitch around 5 mm apart from the edge. If you are pretty experienced in sewing, technically you can skip this step and pin the first panel around and stitch all 3 layers together at once. Personally, I feel more comfortable to fix this ruffle in place and only then make another stitch to join all 3 layers together. Lay the first panel's right side with the top's right side. Start by matching the side seams, then match the notches at the middle and pin around. Stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. I prefer to stitch from the top side because I can see the previously made stitch and make sure that I am constantly stitching on the left side from it. In this way, that previously made stitch will not be visible from the outside. Take a look from the right side how the ruffle is looking. If you accidentally sew in a few pleats in the ruffle like I did here, it is okay, it won't be that noticeable and technically it doesn't hurt. However, if there are some pleats in the top panel or the first panel, then it is better to redo the seam because then the dress will look crooked. Take these 3 layers and neaten them. Here as well, to be completely safe, use a tapestry needle to hide the serger thread inside the seam. As you can see here, the seam allowance is naturally pushing upwards. One issue is that my fabric is transparent and I don't want this seam to be visible there, and another issue is that the ruffle gets pushed downwards and it becomes more flat. That's why I will push the seam allowance downwards and I will top stitch the seam allowance 1 mm or maybe 2 mm apart from the previously made seam. Now the seam allowance and this stitch will be hidden below the ruffle. When sewing, I use my right hand to pull the first panel towards the right side and I use my left hand to pull the ruffle and the top panel towards the left side. I also constantly check that the seam allowance is towards the right side. Take the second ruffle and we need to work in the exact same way as previously. So lay the second ruffle with the right side to the first panel's right side. Match the side seams and pin around. To secure the ruffle into place, make a stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. Join the second panel. Lay the second panel's right side to the ruffle's wrong side and the first panel's right side. Match the side seams, match the middle notches and pin around. Make a stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. After that, neaten all 3 layers together. Let's do top stitching here as well, so our ruffle will be nice and fluffy. Now add the third ruffle to the second panel. This way our dress is quickly coming together. Stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. After that, add the third panel, pin it to the second panel and stitch around 1 cm apart from the edge. I found this part sort of time consuming but also very easy and exciting because we are building the dress panel by panel. Let me know in the comment section what do you think about this part. Do you find it difficult or is it also very simple for you? And remember to do the top stitching. If you decide to skip it, then you would need to invest more time in ironing the seam allowance downwards. Take the fourth ruffle, and this time there is only one side seam, and the endings of the ruffles are matching with the third panel's hemline. Stitch starting from the hem towards the side seam and then again to the hem. Make the stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. Join the fourth panel to the dress. Match the side seam and the hems and stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. Don't forget to knit in the seam and then also do the top stitching. Take the slit ruffle, match the hems, match the side seam, and this time we need to stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. This is the last ruffle we are joining, so after you finish sewing, knit in the seam allowance right away because there will not be any third layer we would add. Here as well, if you are using a serger, leave longer serger threads and use a tapestry needle after you finish knitting to hide the serger threads inside the seam allowance. Honestly, I'm not 100% happy about this step, but I find it necessary. I recommend to top stitch the seam allowance, but this time the stitch will be visible on the 4th panel. I'm not a fan of the fact that this stitch will not be hidden, but if I don't make it, then the ruffle has a tendency to go towards the 4th panel, and that's not the direction we need. The ruffle has to cover the seam allowance and it has to be as an extension of the slit. We have finished the upper part of the dress. Now let's move to the lining. If you are using facing details instead, then skip sewing the darts, since you obviously don't have them, but follow the next steps. If you are using the lining, then stitch the darts at the front panel and also at the back panel. Stitch the darts by following the markings. If you cannot do a back stitch on your fabric, then tie a knot at the end of your stitch. Press the front darts towards the waistline. I am using a plank to cool down the darts, and in this way they will keep the shape much better. Press the back darts either towards the side seams or towards the middle, it's up to you. Knit in all 4 side seams starting from the armholes to the hem, even the slit area. Lay back and front panels with the right sides facing each other. Pin the side seams. Just be careful with the notches. So on this left side seam, pin starting from the armhole to the notch that indicates the beginning of the slit. On the other side, pin starting from the armhole to the notch that indicates the zipper, then leave an opening at the middle and then start pinning again from the notch that indicates the zipper until the hem. Stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. Press the side seams open. Press the upper dress inside the lining, so the upper dress right side is facing lining's wrong side. Match the side seams and match the notch at the middle at the back, and also match the neckline at the front. Pin around. Stitch 1 cm apart from the edge. Now work from the right side of the lining. We need to understitch the neckline so the lining wouldn't be visible when you will be wearing this dress. Find the neckline and push the seam allowance towards the lining. Understitch by making a stitch 2 mm apart from the previously made seam by connecting the seam allowance to the lining. You will not be able to stitch at these corners and at the center of the neckline. That's okay. Stitch only the parts you can access, that will already work wonders. Because I have a jersey lining, I was able to get further compared if I had woven lining, but be careful to stitch through only the lining and the seam allowance and nothing more. This is why I constantly keep checking underneath the fabric. As you can see, I failed with that and I had to use my seam ripper. Find the neckline seam allowance. We need to make small cuts in the seam allowance to release the tension, and thanks to this step it will lay nice and flat on us. Make these cuts every 2 cm and definitely do a cut at the front middle. Also trim off the seam allowances where the straps go, but be careful not to cut in the seam itself. Flip the dress to its right side. We need to make the neckline more accurate looking, so one way would be to thoroughly press it. However, press only along the neckline and not too much on the ruffle's lower part, otherwise it will lose the shape. Since my fabric doesn't allow to do a proper ironing, I will top stitch the neckline below the ruffle. I will make a stitch around 2 mm apart from the neckline that connects the lining with the dress. At all costs, avoid stitching on the ruffle. I'm not proud how that stitch looks here, but good thing is that the ruffle will cover it. And I will give a chance and try to lightly press the ruffle towards the waistline. We need to join the lining to the zipper. Open the zipper. Pin the lining's wrong side with zipper's wrong side. Yes, we need to twist the lining seam allowance. It is okay that the stitch will not start exactly from the notch, maybe even 2 cm lower. But the main thing is to fix the lining, and this way the zipper tape will not rub against your skin, but it will be hidden in between the dress and the lining. Make a stitch approximately 7 mm apart from the edge, but be very careful not to stitch on the zipper's teeth. Do the step for the other side as well. Press the lining along the zipper. Let's work with the slit. Fold 1 cm of the seam allowance at the slit and pin. It also might be helpful for you to press the seam allowance. Make a stitch starting from the hem up to the beginning of the slit and then make a turn and continue stitching to the other hem. Stitch around 7 mm apart from the folded edge. When making the turn, leave the needle in the fabric. Lift the presser foot, turn the fabric, lower the presser foot and stitch. Press the slit. Measure 1 cm of the lining's hem allowance. Press it. Fold again 1 cm of the hem. Stitch 9 mm apart from the lower edge. Press lining's hem. The final thing we need to do is to do a few hand stitches to join the lining to the dress. Find the waistline on the opposite side seam of the zipper. Lay the upper layer on top of the lining in a way the side seams are perfectly matching. Pin at the waist. Then go in between both layers and hand stitch together the upper layer's seam allowance to lining's side seam. Do like 5 hand stitches in one spot. This will prevent the lining twisting around when you will be wearing this dress. We also should secure the lining around the slit areas, so start with matching the side seams. Do a few hand stitches there. Do a few at the hemline and 2 spots in between. If you skip the step, the lining will be coming out of the slit and be visible to other people. We have finished! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If so, please give us a like. Leave a comment what fabric you chose for this dress and subscribe for more sewing and knitting tutorials. Bye!